and we would have wrestling matches in this little second grade like puppet stage. And the teacher next door one day had to like come around and tell us to be quiet because I was like yelling so loud about like, oh no, here comes Baby Bob from the back. Like.
Rewatchers on the pod, where we watch movies and talk about them because we're friends and we're cool. You're here with me, Tyler Harris, and
Gwen Hammer,
Tyler McKinley,
Justin Hammer.
And this week we watched a movie. This is going great so far. We watched a movie called SLC Punk. Because we're all SLC punks ourselves. Anarchy. Oh, boo. Capitalism and stuff. I don't know. I wish I was more punk. That's really why I wanted to watch this movie. But if you were unable to watch, if you didn't do your homework, it's fine. Tyler has a cheat sheet that he is going to read to you in its entirety right now.
Okay, I did write this like just barely, and I watched the movie last night, so a lot of this is out of order, I am sure. So
I mean, you'll probably still get like a C+, which is passing anyway.
Okay,
so,
cool.
Yeah.
Rednecks suck. Punks hate them. You hate them. I hate them. It's in everyone's best interest if we just beat the shit out of them. And that's what Steve-O and Bob do before the opening credits. Sex and violence! We get to learn all the things Steve-O hates. These include, but are not limited to, Utah, any form of government, hippies, mods, rednecks, posers, and the British. Him and Bob are the only two real punks in all of Utah. Steve-O tells the story of a guy in mittens who accidentally did so much lawn sprinkler-induced LSD that he thought he was in an ocean and Satan tried to kill his mom in his house. Steve-O's parents wanted him to go to Harvard. But why would you do that when you can go to University of Utah Law? Steve-O has now graduated college and is even more of a man. What does a grown-ass man do after college? Dismantle the establishment by partying, drinking, and fighting. Maybe he has more in common with the rednecks than he thinks. Oh, hi, Mark. Mark is not a punk, but he has weed, so that makes him a must-invite. Mark's parents were died in a plane crash.
Punk rock, we're dead!
He had everything taken away from him in a moment, so he likes to buy things and show people that he has things to make up for the life that was taken from him. Honestly, he's the most underrated character in this movie. He gets a little crazy with Steve-O and Bob. They steal a car. They try and sink the car in an unsinkable lake. Jason Segel is in this movie. Steve-O likes to bang Trish literally anywhere, but he doesn't love her. Don't you dare suggest it. At some point, Bob cuts his hand and gets hella infected because he hates doctors and needles. He has to be quarantined because his body invented a new virus. He gets out of quarantine. They party. A goddess cannot get over Bob. There's lots of partying and fights. Mark leaves forever. Shooter McGavin applied to Harvard for Steve-O and got him accepted. Steve-O doesn't want any of that. Steve-O and Trish find LSD Mittens Man has become a beggar on the street because he doesn't have experience with women's clothes. How the hell is Steve-O paying for gas and beer? What is his job? I don't know. Speaking of beer, at some point they go to Wyoming with a ska kid to get beer that doesn't suck because Utah beer sucks. Wyoming is not ready for Shaggy and the Mystery Inc., but they are able to get the beer. Now for something completely different. Steve-O and Trish drop acid in a park. This begins a scene that is a watered-down love child of Kubrick and Terrence Malick, only with more park bench sex. Steve-O catches Trish banging another dude at a party. He flips out even though he totally doesn't love her or whatever. Bob is in love with this hippie goddess who owns a bong shop. He suggests to Steve-O that Utah is not that bad. Matthew Lillard deserves an Oscar for this scene because his reaction is spot on the meltdown tantrum that happens if you suggest to a person who constantly bitches about Utah that Utah might not be that bad. Bob and Steve-O go to visit Bob's father on his birthday. Bob's father has a lovely combination of PTSD and paranoid schizophrenia. He tries to shoot them. Steve-O and Bob and Bong Goddess contemplate at the salt flats. They decide to set Steve-O up on a blind date with discount Winona Ryder. DWR spends the whole party talking to Steve-O and pointing out some flaws in his lifestyle. Bob is not doing okay and has a headache. The mods give him some meds to help, quote-unquote help. He breaks a mirror in the bathroom and causes a scene. Steve-O drags him home and lays him on his bed. The next morning, Steve-O goes to wake Bob only to find his lifeless corpse. The events of the past few weeks have made Steve-O realize that the world is not ending and he needs to do something if he is going to survive. He ends up going to Harvard to fight the system from inside. I think he marries discount Winona Ryder, but there's some lack of info in this really short third act. Man, I bet the sequel to this would be really amazing if Matthew Lillard wasn't in it.
Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Oh, God. I have news for you, Tyler. Yeah, that's the SLC Punk. That's everything that happens. All in SLC. What? How many movies can say that? Not very many at all, really.
I mean, not many good ones.
No. There's like a scene from A Punch Drunk Love that supposedly takes place in Provo, Utah.
Oh, yeah.
But
It's definitely not the Provo I'm familiar with.
no. Or Provo at all, I'm sure. That's some warehouse in San Bernardino.
I mean, we get Twin Peaks, like them driving through Provo Canyon at one point.
Yeah, that's true.
about
That's
it.
true. That is a recognized. Like I remember seeing that stretch of highway and be like, I've driven on that fucking road. But yeah, thoughts. This was all of your first time seeing it, right? Had
Yeah.
you seen it?
I watched it with you at Wolverine Crossing.
Okay, that's right.
One of our 2 a.m. start movies, throwing pretzel M&Ms at a mannequin's boobs.
Yeah, much better. I will say there are only a couple of those I remember. This one is much better than Jackie Brown, which we watched.
Oh,
at
gosh,
2 a.m.,
yeah.
and I keep feeling like I need to give that movie a second chance at some point, but it's real hard to bring myself to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, what are some of your impressions?
So the first thing I said when we finished watching this earlier today, I looked at Gwen and I said, "My life is a goddamn stereotype." And that's basically how I feel after watching this movie.
Okay, elaborate on that. Like,
I just feel like, everybody has their thing that they do.
Yeah.
Like everybody's into their stuff, but there comes a point in your life where you gotta grow up, I guess.
Yeah.
And it sucks. And then you go through the period of like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? What does my life mean? And then you get into a point where it's like, this is my life now, and I'm just gonna die after this. And that's how I felt after watching this movie.
that's how I felt after watching that movie too. I was like, I'm just gonna die now. That's a real thing.
Doesn't matter how hard you try to like fight the system. Eventually, you just get consumed by it.
Yeah. That's that's like one of the things about this movie that I think it was so different than what I expected. I mean, my history with this movie is basically like seeing it every time I would go to Blockbuster growing up and just being like, wait a minute, SLC? How many acronyms could use those same 3 letters? Like, this has gotta be. And then I just remember like finally like looking at it one time because it looked like the cover of this movie to me at the time was like, oh, that's intense. It's like stuff's off center. That guy has blue hair. Holy shit, this is like something that I'm not ready for. And I remember finally like working myself up to while my parents were on a different aisle, like grab it quickly and like look at the back, and I was like, rated R, Salt Lake City. What? Oh my god, what? And it was still years before I actually saw this movie. And then I loved it. I thought it was really great. But yeah, I think it definitely, for me, like watching this movie initially, it was one of those things where it's like, oh, cool. This is a place I'm familiar with. Like I've been there. I've seen that. And so there's like something about that was like, I think just really cool and like sort of magical to me, 10 or 11 years ago whenever I saw this. But, yeah. I don't know. Any other like kind of initial thoughts on Gwen? This is your first view.
Yeah, well, kind of related to that. I loved that they slipped in the Zion curtain.
Oh,
It was just like such a loving detail that no one outside of Utah will understand or appreciate. And maybe
Sure.
like 30% of people inside Utah would.
Sure. Yeah.
I really appreciated that.
Probably everybody who saw this movie would appreciate
Yes,
it.
that's true.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, everybody in Utah who saw
Right,
it.
yeah, that's what I
Anyone
meant.
outside has no clue.
Yeah.
But it left me feeling a lot more like vulnerable and sad than I was expecting.
Yeah.
I had like about 20 minutes before the end, I was like, okay, I'm done with this movie. Like I enjoyed
sure.
it, but I walked away and started to make dinner. And then he came downstairs when Bob had passed away, and I like slowly walked back into the family room and just stood there like, oh, well, now I have to feel these things.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say that scene. I mean, I think Matthew Lillard is great throughout this movie. Like, he just nails this character, I feel like. But that scene gets me every time. Like, today I watched this like last week, and then I kind of watched it in chunks this week just to kind of like make sure I remembered everything. And today I was finishing the last half hour at my parents' house, and my brother and his kid were over there, and he had just fallen. They had been trying to get him to sleep forever, and he'd fallen asleep in the front room. So I was in the family room, and I was like, well, I need to finish this. I'll just turn it all the way down and just watch with subtitles, because I've already seen this movie a million times. And just watching that scene with subtitles, it still choked me up, and like, oh, that's a rough scene. There's something about, I feel like a lot of people in movies cry very prettily. And that scene is 100% not that. It feels very real, and like the quick jumps in emotional, you know what I mean? Like his whole like, what am I gonna do for a friend now? Like that, like all just hits so hard. It is really, really incredible. Tyler, do you have any initial thoughts kind of going into?
I remember the first time seeing it, I was kind of shocked that there wasn't more. Like, there's lots of references to the Mormon culture and stuff. But I think smartly for them, if they want like a wider audience, you know, they kind of, that's more of a backdrop to kind of establish more of the story about like subcultures and dealing with your own personal parts and subcultures and stuff like that. That I found to be a really interesting choice, because it could have been so easy to make an entertaining movie for people who live here.
Sure.
But to kind of just use that more as a backdrop, I thought was interesting. I don't know. I felt like, I mean, I still feel like this movie is very interesting because I had a hard time writing this summer, because the second act is really just a jumble of events. It feels like, more than like a really like structured arc, really.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, kind of cool, because thematically it can kind of go with like some punk rock mentality. But like, I think it's one of the few criticisms I have of the film. I mean, there's only like really two that I have, and one of them is this idea that he presents at the beginning of this like last big event before, I'm not quite sure what, because he's graduated college, and that's like, I don't know, before going into life. There's no like, usually there's like goals set in place for that. It really is just partying, fighting, and doing the stuff he's been doing his whole life. Which it works for me and it doesn't work for me. But that's really it. The rest of it is really, really great and moving in a way that's very unique to this movie in particular, of just a wonderful idea of telling a story of a punk rock anarchist in Salt Lake City, Utah in the 80s.
Yeah. It's funny. It's funny now. My perception of this movie has changed like over the years as well. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that I love about this movie is how ridiculous it is at the start. I remember the first time I watched this, and you get 20 minutes in, and then you're cutting back to a scene that you haven't seen for 15 minutes and realize he's just been doing the voiceover for all this stuff of like these flashbacks within flashbacks, and then it's coming back to the night of this party or whatever. And like, I was just like, it's so like jarring and kind of unnerving, but I love how the beginning of this movie, there's just like these vignettes. You get the story of Sean, you know, the initial story of Sean with the LSD, which I think is one of my, I remember first seeing this movie, I was like, this is hilarious. Like, this is such a stupidly hilarious thing of like, this guy just got acid melted into his leg and now like thinks in the middle of the ocean. Like, it still kills me when he's like, he's like, "You're Jesus," and he's like, "Oh no, wait a minute, you're Bob." And he's like, "Yeah, man, I'm Bob." And then like 5 minutes later, he's like, "Wait a minute, man, you are Jesus!" Like that, just that whole section is so good. And then even that, like the next time you see him, that is like completely juxtaposed into a really horrifying like thing of just like, oh, he just lives on the streets, just homeless and can't get a job. Like it is really heartbreaking.
I really
in
like
ways I don't expect.
I really like how there is that juxtaposition between like this kind of hilarity in all of these different stories or settings or just events throughout the movie, but there's this backdrop of like kind of this horror as well that's going on all of the time. Like I love the scene of him talking to his parents about like they've sat him down and they're like, what are you going to do now that you've graduated from high school? We're going to have this conversation. And like how funny it is about his parents being like, yeah, we get it, we understand, we love you, be what you want to be, but you kind of got to go to school and do all this stuff. And there's like this aspect of like the support and the craziness that he's going through in his life. They've been there, they've done that, and now they've like kind of they've I don't know how to put this. It's
Mellowed.
Yeah, mellowed is. Bob uses that term later on in the movie where he's like, "I've mellowed out," which is fucking hilarious that he says that. But yeah,
Bob's line reads in this movie are fucking incredible.
He's great. Yeah,
so good.
But yeah, there's just like all this juxtaposition throughout the entire film of hilarity with this somber kind of like more serious backdrop to things that kind of, I don't know, it's just like this uneasiness in my stomach the entire time that I was watching, which was, I mean, it's great. Like,
I think it's a good example of like it's how tone is so important to connect with the messaging of your film.
Yeah.
And that is kind of the film messaging itself. You know, there's kind of this transition from being a kid and I don't know, there's kind of this naivety that comes with being a kid of, and particularly, I mean, it depends on the kind of the household you were raised in, but I mean, even I feel like it's kind of general for all children is you have this sense of invincibility and freedom and real life doesn't sink in. And especially with like a culture we have now with how much, like, I don't want to be like, oh, the media is bad, but like with how much media we have and the things we see, of like you can be whatever you want to be, and very like positive messaging that probably wasn't there, you know, 100 years ago, is kind of warps your perception that then you get thrown out into the real world and you realize, fuck, like it's dark, it's intense, and like these things that like I thought were harmless that I was doing, I now get why my parents were like, I mean, overly protective in some cases, but like I understand why their concern was there now, and I think this film does a good job of kind of presenting that contrasting moment and someone who has a hard time letting go of that, I guess.
Yeah. I think that Steve-O's journey for me is probably the stuff that is like shifted. My perspective is shifted on the most. Partially because of like those reasons, like the stuff with his parents, the just where Steve-O comes from. Like there's actually, I don't think the movie delivers on this as much as it could, but there's actually a really, I think, interesting like societal commentary if you look at Steve-O and Bob, because Steve-O is just from an incredibly privileged place. He has chosen to do this punk thing and live in this, but honestly, if he didn't want to, 3 days later, he could be somewhere else. You know what I mean? His family is very rich, you know, all of that. And you look at Bob's story, and Bob's is incredibly different. I mean, Bob does not have a family. His dad is very gone, lives in some shack by a power plant, almost kills them. You know what I mean? Like all of that. And, to me, that's one of the things that this movie, I think, if it was made today, I think would probably maybe push those differences a little bit more, because I do think that's such an interesting contrast. And like, even if you look at like Bob's whole, if you look at Bob's whole life and you look at something like the documentary Decline of Western Civilization 3, where Penelope Spheres just went and hung out with gutter punks in LA in the early 90s, so not very much different, but like the image that you get of punk from that kind of thing is you see it isn't a fashion thing, it isn't a music thing. It's actually a bunch of kids who don't have families and literally have nowhere else to go and are living on the streets. And the punk thing is just a thing that is bringing them together and like saving some of them while also causing others to die. Like it is such a messy thing. And so I think that's probably my biggest criticism of the movie is like the ending feels sort of triumphant in a way. Where like this time I definitely came away like feeling it's way more tragic to me on this watch, I think, because of those things.
I didn't feel any sort of triumph. Like,
right. Well, I'm talking about the way that the movie presents the ending is like that shot of Steve-O smiling and looking into the camera is like
A weird choice.
it is a weird choice.
Yeah.
And especially in the light of what has just come
He's coming out of a
before it.
funeral too, and it's like
yeah.
And I mean, I get that. I don't know. To me, I guess Bob has just become the central figure of this movie for me over the years, and so that like feels just weirder every time I watch it. But yeah, anyways. But yeah, I guess what are some other? Are there like a couple other characters that we want to talk about? We can keep talking about Bob if you guys have any thoughts on that before we move on.
I know, Tyler, in your summary, or maybe since then, I don't know. Mark. I wanted to talk about Mark.
Yeah.
Because I think he was fantastic. And he, even though he's in there for not very long,
Yeah.
it is great. And the scene where he threatens those guys, that scene was amazing. I loved that. And then the night that they have together where he just pulls them along because they're terrified that he's going to shoot them if they don't go along with it.
Yeah.
And then she tries to he shoots
Sink
the
a guy.
lake like
Oh yeah.
I can't remember the line, like you son of a bastard lake or whatever it is that he says, like as he's shooting his gun into it. Man, that whole segment was fantastic.
I wish I could remember the exact line of what he's like. It's a laser disc. Like I don't remember what the whole line is there, but it's just remember holding up that giant thing. He's like, it's like a record, but a movie's on it. Like, that whole thing is like so dumb.
yeah, I fucking love that sequence where he's like showing off all of his stuff that he's bought.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think he's, I don't know, to me he's one of the most interesting characters in this movie, even though his impact is kind of small.
Yeah.
I think his biggest impact is like kind of almost a throwaway line, but it I think is important for Steve-O's character, even though if they don't really attach or explain it or expound on it anyway. Is he's just like, I'm going, is it Miami that he's going to? Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm going to Miami. He's like, what are you doing in Miami? He's like, Miami's just a place. Like, it's streets and buildings and cars and like same as Utah. Like,
Yeah.
Like, and like, I think that's important for Steve-O's eventual like realization, even if they don't touch on it at all, is that it's like you get so hung up on your subculture's identity and like the bitching about Utah becomes your culture.
Yeah.
And it holds you back. And I think we all have that in our own things that we do. We've attached an identity so much to something that it almost becomes like these unwritten rules that we have to like live by, like just in our own subconscious. And I definitely think that it's a bad thing for people. And I think that the character of Mark illustrates it really strongly, because he has this tragic backstory and he is really trying to fill that void by getting as much as he can, because he knows that it can all go in an instant. And so he just wants and wants and wants, which is like, usually you see those people like, wow, that person's an asshole. But then with this character, you're like, oh, and you like feel, this viewing much more than the first time I saw it, I very much felt for Mark in such a tragic way that I was like, oh, I get you. I'm scared to hell of you. Like, I'm so scared of you, but I get it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's like one of the running things in this that Steve-O struggles with is like, because you have all these characters around him who are attached to something, who like you kind of see the process, or you see moments of them getting attached to something, you know, whether it's with just Mark just getting a bunch of shit, just whatever he can. With Bob, it's his relationship with oh god, I just forgot her name. the
Bong goddess is what I
Bong goddess, sure. Like getting into a relationship where he's feeling emotionally connected to someone and emotionally attached to someone. Now, I'm not going to discuss the health of that relationship because who knows? It looks weird to me, but maybe it's fucking awesome. I don't know. And then even Jason Segel's character, who is such a small character, but I love the scenes with Jason Segel are some of my favorites. Like,
is he the guy with the glasses?
yes,
Yeah.
I loved him. He was fantastic.
So good. Like that scene where he's in the hospital and there's that little girl sitting across from him. He's like, oh, he drew a picture. He's just like this sweet guy. And then the next time we see him, like when Steve was talking about him, he's like, this guy looks like a total dweeb. Like, what a piece of shit. He's one of the toughest motherfuckers. And he just like beats the shit out of people. And then becomes an environment, like wants to go into environmental law. Like even he finds this attachment where he's like, I'm going to study botany so I can save the rainforest. Like, and I feel like that's the thing that Steve-O, like he doesn't have any of that throughout the movie. And I feel like that he just becomes so antagonistic when that's even like presented as a possibility to him. Yeah. Until we have that moment at the end, which is like, it's pretty fucked how far it had to go, like how far you had to be pushed in that direction. But yeah, it's wild. And again, like that, they present that relationship real quick at the end that he says will be, you know, this is my future wife, like, which I assume is whatever. I'm sure that played a part, but yeah, it is really interesting.
I think Jason Segel's characters, I find him even more hilarious because I feel like I know that kid.
Sure,
like
yeah.
There's that kid who's like raised by the Supermorton family who looks like he's like just the perfect little BYU kid, but he just hangs out with like the roughest crowd.
Yeah. And like busts out the windows of cars and fights cops.
Yeah.
Gets away with it.
Who doesn't really swear, but when he does swear, you know that shit's about to go down.
For sure. Oh man. Yeah, I love all those side characters so much. What else? Were there any other thoughts that you guys had kind of just watching it that you wanted to talk about or feel like we need to bring up?
Did they show on the drive to Wyoming the scenery was going the wrong direction, wasn't it? Like the initial shot of them as he's narrating like their drive to Wyoming. I think it's west on I-80 instead of east.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't even notice that.
There's like two main ways to Wyoming, I think, and I honestly I think I've been on one time each, and I don't remember.
I don't know. Maybe driving to Wyoming looks exactly the same as driving through Nevada or across like the Salt Flats.
It's more depressing.
Okay.
I will
Wait,
say
it's more depressing than Nevada?
Yeah, because Nevada, it's like, oh my gosh, it's Vegas. It's like a Western movie.
Going
but like,
south, maybe.
Yeah,
Driving
I was gonna
across
say.
I-80 is like,
West
I want
is
to
the
kill
worst.
myself every time we
do
go
I
that
go a
way.
different way than you
the
guys?
Reno way. If you're going through Reno, that's the part where you're like, oh fuck. Because I
Well,
remember.
at least with Reno, it's almost over.
True. That's true. That's true.
You guys go west to get there?
If you're going to Northern California,
Oh, yeah.
That
I hate driving to California, man. Driving to California is like, there's so many horrible things I'd rather do.
I just remember me and my brothers and dad did a road trip where we went to L.A. and then drove the Pacific Coast Highway up to Portland and then came back the boring way. And man, that drive is so, like, just up Highway 1 is fucking amazing. It's incredible. Like, it's like you drive that highway and then you realize this is what all of Bon Iver's albums were about, was just this fog settling over this beautiful beach and me just being like, why the fuck do I work in an office? Why am I not like collecting shells and selling them to tourists? And then you get to Portland and you're like, just like the TV show. I know everything. I've already seen it all. So then you leave and man, yeah, that is a soul sucking drive, especially after you've like hit this high and it's just like, America is too big. There's too much of it. This part, obviously, it could have used an editor, is what I'm saying. America could have used an editor.
whenever we get to about Winnemucca, I'm always looking around going, what do these people do? Like, I want to knock on some doors and just,
drugs.
Crystal, yeah, I was going to say crystal meth mostly.
Who are you? How did you get here?
Probably-
that isn't.
Probably the Mormons.
Well, yeah.
That's a common thread for all of these
Was a
little
farmer.
places.
His dad was a farmer.
So what you're telling me? They're quitters. Before they got to California, they're like, I'm fucking done. Here, Winnemucca, sure.
That would have been me. Let's be honest. I fucking hate driving long distances. Let alone walking them.
Yeah, well, I'd have gotten to winter quarters and just died, so.
Never had foot tacos before.
Yeah. Anyways, SLC Punk.
Doesn't-
They talked about Donner's
Yeah, I was
gonna
gonna say,
party.
isn't that like their description of how Salt Lake, or like kind of, I don't remember exactly what it was, but Salt Lake City was put into that context of like, this is the place where this guy did some stuff and got separated from the Donner's Party Pass, and he had to go back or the Donner's Party, and he had to go back and save him,
Yeah.
even though he was the one who like killed somebody or something. I don't know.
Yeah. There's so many. I will say it's still weird. It's weird like how much Salt Lake has changed. So then you still see the shots of this movie, and like even though it's familiar, it still feels so different now. Like just that shot of like, oh yeah, Temple Square didn't used to have a huge fucking wall around it. Like it was just a place. Like that's insane. Anyways, yeah, I think it was like 3 or 4 months ago. Anyways, this movie like had its 20th anniversary recently, and I want to say it was 4 months ago or something. They had a free showing of it in Salt Lake that I went to, and the director was there, and he did a Q&A, and it was really interesting. There were like some really interesting tidbits about this movie. Spike Lee was originally going to produce this movie. He was working on something. It wasn't SLC Punk at the time. The director had actually moved from Salt Lake to New York to go to film school and was working on a script about punks in Brooklyn. And Spike Lee was like, there are no punks in Brooklyn. And he was like, I have like 20 friends who are punks in Brooklyn. He's like, nah, we ain't doing that shit. And so then he was like, fine, I'm gonna like go, I'll go make this money, like this movie in Salt Lake, and found like people who would finance it, and he ended up writing the script, which is really, Spike Lee, you fucked up. Think of where your career could have been if SLC Punk was on your filmography. Just kidding. Do the Right Thing's great. Everyone should watch it. But it's crazy because like almost all these characters are based on people that he knew in real life. And one of the weird things that happened at this Q&A that I went to was, well, because they showed the movie and then afterwards had like a Q&A, and people came up and asked questions. Some were great and some were really stupid. But this old man, like this 67-year-old man, I don't know if that's his actual age. I'm inferring from his gait and posture. It's an older man that you would not expect to see at an SLC Punk showing, came forward, and it turns out that he is the father of the real life person that the character Sean is based off of, who does all the acid and all that. And it turns out Sean died, I think not too long after this movie came out, like 1999 or 2000. And this guy had never seen the movie. But his relationship with this movie was basically receiving mail from people all over the world who saw this movie and were like, those stories about Sean are insane. They're so like that, like just all these letters. And so he had brought a bunch of stuff to give to the director. But this was his first time seeing like this movie about where his son plays, not his son, but like this character is based on his son. And it was a really interesting and weird thing. But he was just like, I'm so glad that like Sean's antics brought joy to people. He's like, because it was really hard, and obviously like that movie shows that Sean had a really rough life. But he's like, there's something comforting about getting letters from someone in Germany who's like, Sean seemed really cool, man. Like, he was real wild. He's like, he was really wild. He's like, and seeing this movie, he's like, Sean seems pretty cool. But it was just a really interesting thing. And I can't imagine having that experience of like, I don't know, seeing someone you know portrayed like that. But
yeah, some of the things in this movie seem very specific that it's
Sure.
like, there you can tell that these are events pulled from someone's life.
Yeah.
Whether they're obviously probably embellished in some areas, but like, yeah, it just feels like someone who's known a lot of interesting people.
Yeah.
And
Well, and I love even like the stuff about Sean. Like when Harold Bob was telling that story, it feels like those stories you'd hear in high school of like, did you hear what Jason did? Jason fucking did. He stole a cop car. What, you know what I mean? Like all this shit, and it's like that's insane. Like,
I love how Jason's your go-to name for like everything.
do you know why?
Why?
Jason, Jason, Jason.
Jason.
Go. Anyways, but yeah, I think this movie is a really interesting. It's become such a comfort food for me. I think I love spending time with these characters, and like I'm a sucker for like an eloquent like fourth wall breaking monologue and voiceover in a movie. Like if it's well done, I just think it's such an audacious and stupid choice to make that when it works, I'm so into it. But yeah, I don't know. Any closing thoughts on SLC Punk?
Can we talk about the wardrobe for a minute? 'Cause
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
incredible.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
I like that. That was half of what I was focusing on. Is wow, these people are dressed so differently than what I see in my normal life, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
And it felt like the wardrobe people just went to, Savers and DI and picked up a bunch of stuff in the best way.
Yeah.
It was great.
You should come to a show with us.
Yeah.
Because you'll be dodging flying kicks from those types of people.
God.
Listen, I'm 5'2", a housewife.
So
That's
what
why
you're
you
telling
wear
me?
metal spikes
Yeah.
when you go to the
I
shows.
was just gonna say, in my experience, the most dangerous person in the crowd, probably.
All right, let's do it.
I just remember. Do you remember seeing Chiodos at Warped Tour and just like a pit opening up and everyone being in it, and then in 12 seconds just cleared out because the guy was just literally
Yeah,
doing flying
They're, like,
roundhouse kicks.
Yeah, he's
It's
spinning.
like, what are we supposed to do, my dude?
I remember that so clearly because that was the moment I was like, what the fuck am I doing listening to Chiodos? This band sucks.
Oh God! Oh man! Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
I knocked on the lead singer of Chiodos' door on my mission. Oh my God! We'll tell that story later.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I think the wardrobe is great. I also like mods. I like mods
Yeah.
is like a thing. It's like I don't really know what that is.
Was
Like,
that like a big thing? I wonder. Like,
I
then,
assume, yeah, like the 80s. I wonder like how much that crossed over with like the idea of like new wave or like I don't know.
'Cause
Is
I
it-
mean,
New Wave
you're-
was a separate category that he lists in the
Oh,
where
that's
he's
true.
going
Yeah,
through
yeah.
like the Nazis and the rednecks and New Wave. He says like they're the
New
they're the
hippies,
the new hippies. They don't do anything.
They're,
Right,
like,
yeah.
the bottom of the food chain.
yeah.
I mean, like, people hate mods now, but it's a totally different thing.
Sure,
you know?
yeah.
Are we talking like Thomas the Tank Engine mods?
Oh, you're talking Skyrim mods.
people love
those are
those
amazing.
mods.
Those mods, A+. I was thinking Reddit
Yeah,
moderators.
that's what I was.
Oh, okay.
Or moderators of any community.
But I'm not gonna be
online.
honest. I mean, like the crossover mods who are like have their foot in all the scenes. I'm like, those are the cool guys. Those are who I want to be when I was in the 80s.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. What a what a great thing. Cool. Well, if we don't have any thoughts, I guess we can close out SLC Punk for now. This is the first week that we're doing this new thing that we're going to do on the podcast where we just follow IMDb threads through obscure crew members.
So we're not really good at announcing our themes. We just finished a theme last week, 2 weeks ago,
Guilty pleasures,
about
yeah.
guilty
Yeah, yeah.
pleasures. So
If it's not apparent that Step Up Through is a guilty pleasure that not all of us were in on watching, we are doing a terrible job, and I'm so sorry.
so yeah, this is the unsung heroes theme that we're doing
Yeah.
now,
And we're just gonna do this for a while.
which we didn't focus on at all. On this. Like, I guess costume design. We
a little
we
bit.
finished on costume
well, I mean,
design.
we're mainly using that as the linking thread between discussions.
They're not supposed to know that.
The unsung heroes will be sung at the end of episodes when we tell them the connection to the next movie, which we will be doing with Peter Epstein.
Ah, yes. Peter.
Everyone is familiar with Peter Epstein's work. They may not have known that he worked on SLC Punk, but he was a stunt coordinator.
It's just listed under stunts.
He was a stunts for SLC Punk, and since then has graduated to stunt coordinator / stunt double : Adam Sandler in the movie Uncut Gems, which is the next movie we'll be watching, which is on Netflix, which is a delightful little film. I don't know if delightful is the right word. It will have your blood pressure medication nearby, because it is a wild fucking ride, and it's really good. Uncut Gems, we're going to watch and talk about that.
Did you like when the Boston Celtics were good and it wasn't Larry Bird? That guy's in this movie.
That guy is in it, as well as Adam Sandler. So what kind of... Of course you're going to see some wacky hijinks. But yeah, so we'll be watching that, and we'll go ahead. Oh, if you want to reach out to us, you can email us at rewatchersunthepod@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram or Twitter at rewatcherspod. And we're going to take a brief break and be back with recommendation. Welcome back to the recommendation section of Rewatchers on the Pod. We're here to talk about some other stuff we watched during the week, or played, or listened to, or fought in our backyards. Tyler, what do you have for us?
I mean, technically it's kind of a follow-up because it's been recommended multiple times on this podcast. But I got sick this week, so I had a little more time on my hands, and I spent it watching What We Do in the Shadows on Hulu, the series.
Nice.
And yeah, I enjoyed it. I really liked the movie. It definitely feels different from the movie. Like it's like the same concept, but it's like I really like the actors in the movie a lot. And so I had to kind of warm up to these new people, which I eventually did. But yeah, it's less like quotable than I thought it was going to be. It's very situational humor.
Yeah.
But boy, is the situational humor very funny. So if you like, I'm trying to think of something to compare it to, like vein of something. If people like X, they'll like this. It's not like super. There's like British people in it, but it's not super Britishy humor. There's a little bit of that in there, but it's a nice balance. I feel like between like British humor and Western humor, and yeah, it's just really. It's kind of like if you like the situational humor of The Office. It's not like The Office, but it's that type of situational humor that The Office has, only dealing with like vampire tropes. Really great.
Have you seen the Mark Hamill episode yet?
No, I've seen.
Okay.
I think I've seen like 5 episodes.
Oh, of the first season?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And I think the episode I watched last was with the witch hat, which was one of my favorite
the
like
cursed
situations.
hat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like a hat made out of the skin, like stitched together skin of dead witches, and it's just totally cursed.
But everyone just thinks it's so cool, and they like fight. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, that for sure. Like the first season, I like got to the end and I was like, okay, that was fun. Like I enjoyed it. The second season just ended, and it's really awesome. There's some episodes in there that just
I definitely want to keep watching. The only thing that's going to stop me is just time. To be honest, like if I had more time, I would totally 100% keep going with it. So I definitely recommend it.
Yeah. Cool. All right, Gwen, what do you have to recommend for us this week?
Well, I finished Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. Lots of hype about it. People really, really liked it. And gotta read it. And it won all sorts of awards. I just didn't get it.
Like this is every book you read, Glenn. Is it? This is the same intro for every book you ever tell me. And it's great.
Maybe I just don't get it.
You're like the most cynical reader ever. It's great.
I don't feel like I'm an especially cynical person, though. So what's wrong
I know.
with
That's
me?
why it's so funny.
Now this was also just turned into a show, right?
Yeah.
Is it HBO or Hulu maybe?
I think HBO.
Okay.
With blonde lady who I can't think of her name.
Yes.
Yeah,
One of the 3.
Yeah.
So what is the premise of it?
It's like it starts with a house burning down with little fires everywhere. So someone clearly set the fires, and so
Gotcha.
the point of the book is to get to why this person set the fires. And it's just like I didn't find it that interesting. Like,
Is it like an allegory for something?
Masturbation mostly.
Oh.
yes, that was it. That was the missing
Little
piece.
fires everywhere. That's what you'll be feeling if you.
So there was like all the different places they masturbated in the house?
Exactly. How is that not clear?
Okay, yeah, sure.
Every time you masturbate,
Worth
a
exploring.
little fire starts.
In someone's house.
You've been warned.
I like how you literally just pointed at all of us when you said that.
Pointing at the world in general, but sure.
I mean, since we all know each other, we're in the most danger of fire getting started in our house by someone in this room
That's how it
masturbating.
works, right? That's how the book says it works. It's people you know that the fires start.
Maybe
You're just going down like, man, I hope they're okay.
maybe I just didn't get this book because I didn't understand that mechanic.
Yeah, you probably need to go back and read it
Yeah,
now.
if I reread it.
And report back next
Yeah.
week.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
I am going to type a hell of a review on Goodreads after this.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, sorry. Go on.
That's fine.
So yeah, anti-recommendation for little fires everywhere, unless you're into that.
Recommendation. Like, it was well written.
Okay,
and
okay.
like the characters were interesting, and then it just got to the end, and I was like, oh, so she was
The
just,
payoff just didn't really work for you.
She
then,
was
like.
an angsty teen, and she burned her parents' house down,
Whoa.
which you know at the beginning.
Okay.
So like, I don't know.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But I've been playing, for nostalgia's sake, Age of Empires 2, and it's great.
Yeah. Are you playing like the HD remaster?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, Justin. I was
Yes.
I bought it for $20. But I'm having the same problem that I had as a kid, where I play on the super easy and I kick the computer's butt, and then I play on easy and I also kick the computer's butt, and then I play on medium and I get absolutely fucking destroyed every time. And it's so frustrating. Like, I figured, okay, as an adult, I will know how to do this better. No, yeah. It's very
I
frustrating.
played a lot of that game, and I had a similar experience. And I played, but I didn't really realize what I was doing. I guess like that I was playing on the easy difficulty. I played with Mark and Matt. Matt Hammond is better at that game than I am, and he kicked my ass.
My eyes just got so big.
Like, I'm very bad at that game, so I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, that's it.
there's always cheats. You know, it's just,
Well,
some
I
of the
haven't
best.
I haven't put the race car in yet.
Okay,
but
okay.
I will get there.
Have you played Galactic Battlegrounds? Star Wars.
No.
It's Age of Empires, made by the same people, same engine. It's just Star Wars,
Maybe I have.
and it's
Yes, I
pretty
have.
great.
Yeah. You have the little droids that like harvest the crystals.
Yeah.
And, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
makes you feel a little bit better about the slave labor because they're droids.
A little bit. But my kids have been standing behind me and watching and started imitating the like
oh,
the noises.
Yes.
So like the attack noise, the horn, just Tyr will all of a sudden just go "Brrr!"
At least he's like prefacing, you know, something's about to happen.
I still do that with Warcraft. Like whenever any video game or anything, or even like in real life, when like someone's throwing stuff, I'm like, "We're under attack."
That's amazing. Well, it's good. I didn't play a ton of Age of Empires 2, but I've heard that remaster's pretty rad, and that sounds like the right price for it. I'm gonna have to check that out. My recommendations this week, a video game that I'm sure everyone's been playing this week. Skyrim. Anyone?
Oh, because you have a PC now.
You heard of this game, Skyrim? Yeah, I do have a PC now. So
What's your mod count at right now?
I'm at 64 mods. I have played
Those are
12
amateur numbers.
I have played 12 minutes of Skyrim, but I have worked on Skyrim for several hours. I will say, holy shit. Getting SKSE script extender to load into my Vortex mod client made me want to kill everyone in my apartment complex and then burn it to the ground by starting little masturbation fires everywhere. Holy shit. But it now works. And here's the thing. I have never finished Skyrim. I have never completed the story of Skyrim. So I basically just got every mod that doesn't like make everything a bouncy castle or like introduce Darth Maul as your playable companion, anything like that. And I will say, just loading it up and seeing how it looks is insane.
Yeah.
Just people did that. Not Bethesda, because they're not going to fucking touch anything ever again, unless it's to get Skyrim running on the PS5, which I'm sure it already does and will be a launch day thing. Anyways, but that was really cool, and I just played through the first little bit, and I got the mod that's like open cities, so you can just walk through gates into cities, and there's no loading screens, and I felt like a god. But yeah, so I've been doing that, and it's great.
Have you done the one that changed my life was books. Books are highlighted.
No, I didn't do that one. I did like the unique book covers. So now I am looking at bookshelves and it's just like pornography to me. I'm like, holy shit, it's so detailed. Like every book has a different cover. Like there's a real books. It's really good.
Yeah, it's like unread books are marked in a certain color, especially and ones that can give you skill. Like are like a different color, and unread ones only glow. So it's like, oh my gosh, thank you. I don't want to read the Lusty Maid or whatever.
See, on that we cannot agree. I will eat everything. I will read everything.
Until there's a mod that animates it, I'm not reading it again.
This is the flipbook version.
The pop-up Argonian Maid. Oh man. But man, yeah, no, I actually just stopped kind of playing again, and I role played hard this time. Like I wrote, in my head, I was like, "Okay, my character is this. They do this," and then I did the start a new life thing where you're not the Dragonborn.
Right? Yeah, I saw that.
And and then I just only do I don't complete anything. I just kind of play out a narrative, and then I'm like, "Okay, I'm done with that character. On to a new one." So last character I did was a sorceress who was starts at is poor and doesn't have anything and starts going through the mage school and then slowly works her way up to working for all the different jarls and stuff.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, yeah. And then I was like, it kind of worked until you got to a certain point in the story and it's like, oh, you got to go do some Dragonborn stuff to do this. And so I was doing something completely unreal. I'm like, this is kind of fourth wall breaking, but okay.
You want to open a soap shop? You have to go kill 6 dragons tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's cool. That's kind of amazing that exists. I cannot think of anything 40 years ago that could be compared to what Skyrim is as a community, and it's such a weird thing that game is still just as prevalent and as big as it is. And I think in a lot of ways you can say getting better, with every. Anyways.
Yeah, isn't there supposed to be a big mod release soon that is adding Oblivion into the game or something?
I've heard about that. I didn't see anything. I was obviously up to my eyeballs in a bunch of other bullshit, but I have heard about that, which would be insane and crazy. And
that would be great. I haven't heard about that one because I know they're doing that with Fallout New Vegas. They're just recreating it in Fallout 4.
Okay.
Which I hope they finish eventually because I would definitely play that. But
so I've been doing that. I've been playing a little bit of another video game called Destiny 2.
Sorry.
Here's the thing. I really fucking like Destiny 2. As much as I hate it, I just love it. And I'm playing again. That's another game. It's free to play on PC and has cross save. So I've just brought all my characters from my PS4.
I didn't know it had cross save.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I brought them over to PC, and that game is really pretty, and the shooting is real good, and as much as the lore is stupid, I also really like it. But anyways, Destiny 2 is great. You should try it. The main thing I want to recommend this week is a show I have watched in its entirety. It's 2 seasons. I think it's 19. No, it's probably more than that. It's 20 10-minute episodes, essentially. It is an Adult Swim show called Joe Pera Talks with You. And I don't know if any of you have seen this at all. It is just a show centered around a man with a very monotonous voice who lives in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and talks to you about things. The first episode is Joe Pera talks to you about iron. And he just begins to talk about the history of iron in the Upper Peninsula. Naturally, the show goes in weirder and better places, but it is not your typical Adult Swim show. If you're feeling anxious or worried about stuff, I have been watching Joe Pera at night just to kind of like unwind, and it is like an incredibly wholesome and goofy and adorable show about a choir teacher in the Upper Peninsula who just is fascinated by all the mundane things around him. And it's really great, and you should check it out. I think you can watch the entire first season on Adult Swim's website for free. And then the second season is streaming in a couple places, but you'll be able to find it if you search it. But Joe Pera Talks With You is incredibly awesome. It's kind of like, it feels Mr. Rogers-y almost. Like, I just feel so much joy when I watch it, and it's real good. Yeah, that's it for me. Justin, what do you have for us?
Real quick, I've finally watched The Social Network like a week and a half ago.
Okay.
It's really interesting watching it now versus what I imagine it was like watching it when it came out because of how much has changed since then. Like watching it now, the movie almost feels prophetic in a way, like the tone and everything, and the way Mark Zuckerberg is portrayed by Jesse Eisenberg, like as a villain. And like I don't know. I was reading articles, like reviews that were written when The Social Network was released, and there were so many of them that were talking about how it like made a caricature out of Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, and like it wasn't super accurate to like the way that Facebook is in real life and all this stuff. And like looking at those reviews now, it like that's not the case. Like this
Those have not aged well.
Right, yeah. It was that was a good time. I'm glad I finally watched it. I should have watched it forever ago, but got that one checked off the list, and I'm glad that I did. Also, I have been playing up until a few days ago, continue to play Apex, and they just recently announced that they're going to be bringing crossplay to Apex across all of their consoles. They're releasing on the Switch as well, which I think is really cool. And they've got a big content update that's coming soon, I think. I think the content update is like next week, this Tuesday possibly, which adds a bunch of cool new cosmetics, and they're doing like an event and everything. And then crossplay is coming in the fall, I think. So, we'll be able to play against all of our console brethren at that point.
I will say, talking to you and Truman about Apex the other night, and like realizing that I could bind stuff to mouse scroll up and down. I did that on a couple of things. I'm like, I have no fucking idea what I'm doing.
Wait, you did what?
People like, so they were they would put jump, right?
Yeah, so if you bind jump to your mouse scroll up, and especially if you have a scroll button that you can like do the infinite scroll on, you know.
So you're just like,
it's a way. There's a tech.
It makes you go faster, right?
Yeah, it's called bunny hopping. It's like an old tech from what's the engine that they're using? I can't remember the game engine that they're using. It's
I can't remember the name of it though.
It's whatever. Yeah, it's whatever those games are built in, which is a super old game engine at this point. But yeah, it's been a tech in like all of their games for a long time. But it makes it so you can move around a lot quicker, and if you're really good at games, like it's an advantage if you're able to do those things.
Yeah. I will say, being new to PC, I was just like, well, if they're doing it, I'm gonna try it. And I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. Yeah. But it did cause me to just like bind a bunch of bullshit to my mouse wheel for like a bunch of games. And like, I'm trying to remember some, but like, yeah, I've been sprinting in Hitman using the mouse scroll up.
No.
And it's really stupid, but it just opened up a whole new world to me. I was like, I have 2 more inputs I can use. What should I do with them? And the answer is everything.
You can spam forever too. Like you flick that mouse wheel. Like
yeah,
imagine like Winston's like, hello there, just on scroll wheel.
Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. I honestly, and that's the thing. Like that mouse has that button that you can unlock the scroll wheel, and it does feel like you're pressing a turbo button, and then just fucking just flinging it into the space.
Yeah.
Like it's, yeah, what a great thing.
You guys disgust me.
Hey, I have one win in Apex, and I've played at least 30 games.
I need to play with you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can play sometime.
And then just to bring it back to something that I think we all want to talk about a little bit, The Last of Us 2 released this week, and we've all been playing. I think we're all kind of close. I'm behind you, both of you, a little bit right now.
You're The Last of Us Left Behind.
Yes.
A fantastic entry in The Last of Us series.
Yeah, so to start, I was thinking earlier that when The Last of Us released, I remember finishing the game and thinking like, holy shit, this story blew me away. This is, to this day, I stand by The Last of Us being the most impactful story that I've ever experienced in a video game. And looking back on that before The Last of Us 2 released, I was thinking like the gameplay wasn't super compelling for me. I didn't think that it was a lot of fun to play. However, I've completely changed on that with The Last of Us 2, and I don't know if it's just because I haven't played a game like this in a long time that's slower paced, and I think like something that I can compare kind of the gameplay to, the slow gameplay, is Red Dead 2. Like just where everything has an animation, it's all very like forcefully paced out. But I am loving it this time through. The stealth options that you have when you're fighting enemies versus just going guns blazing. Like you can decide to do that. I mean, you're going to get punished depending on how you implement those actions, but man, I'm having so much fun. And then the story is just completely wrecking me so far, but in the best way. I didn't think that I wanted more of Ellie and Joel's story. I'm still not 100% sure that that's the case. I need to wait until this story finishes before I can say that, okay, this was appropriate or not for The Last of Us, or if it should have been like an unrelated story in the same universe. I don't know. We'll see. As much as I love Ellie and Joel, but because The Last of Us, for me, was a perfect story. But yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts. I'm curious to know what you guys think about it so far.
First of all, 0 out of 10. Ruined my life. SJW dribble.
Did you punch a hole in the wall?
Just, man, I've made that same review at least 15 times on every one of my Metacritic accounts. Fuck. No, I love this game. It's been a while since I've played a game. This is literally making time melt away for me. Like I played this some on Friday, and it was like literally that thing of like, holy shit, 3 hours have gone by, and I need to pee. I've had to pee for at least an hour and a half. But just like it's been really compelling for me. I love it. I love the like I said, the improvements they've made to gameplay. Are awesome. There is a dodge button, which we had talked about 2 weeks ago. It's not the best implementation of a dodge button. I'm not very good at it.
I keep forgetting what button it's mapped to because I keep pressing circles. That's what it is in every fucking game. So I'm like, fuck. And I'm like getting shot. Like, it's the worst.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that it's one of those things that, I mean, this has been Naughty Dog for a while, but like, I feel like every time one of those games comes out, it's like, holy shit, there's like a new bar for like, amount of detailed bullshit we're gonna put into these moments. And I think I texted you guys about the workbenches in this game where you're upgrading your guns.
I'm so glad I'm playing with headphones on this. I mean, it's out of necessity because my PlayStation, like I mentioned before, sounds like it's going to explode every time I boot it, but I'm playing with headphones, and the audio design in this game is insane.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
It's so good. I just keep switching between guns because it's just oh man, all those clicks, all those little clicks in my ear, just great.
The ambient noises as you're just like sitting there, like there is the faintest like tree branch cracking or something, or like a pipe, like water dripping from a pipe somewhere when you're in a building, that's just like man, it's insane.
I think the thing that sold me, I mean, I have a couple gripes with the audio. I feel like the directional audio is not very good in my opinion, and maybe I need to change the settings or something, but I feel like I hear people in a direction that they are not a lot.
Okay, yeah.
But other than that, it's phenomenal. I think the thing that sold me on it was at the very beginning when you're in the town, and it feels, I mean, you don't realize how much audio sells a town until you're in a game with bad audio in it, in like a city. Yeah. And you're like, it feels so lifeless because sometimes people just don't talk at all. And then if there is like chatter, it's you know, like this game did a really good job at making it feel like I could hear people, and I could for brief, like it's just like real life. Like as you're passing them, you can hear what they're saying, but then as it like you get further away, it's like more muffled. And really cool sound design there that way. I'm glad you guys like it because I like it, and nobody seems to fucking like it. And
that's I honestly cannot parse how much of that is.
Well, I think
bullshit on the internet.
In my opinion, so far at least, I need to finish it. This game is not as good in the sense as the first one. It's not as perfect, I should say. But I haven't finished it.
Yeah,
and
I mean, I have to keep reminding myself. By the time I got to Pittsburgh in the first game, I wasn't like thinking it was the most incredible. You know what I mean? Like story wise, for me, the thing that really sealed The Last of Us was the way they stuck the landing at
finale.
The end.
Yeah.
And so that's I'm kind of in that same state.
I think honestly the beginning of both games is a little slow, and I think especially in this one there's some things they could cut. There's a sequence at a TV station that I think could just be completely cut out. That would save some time, make the pacing a lot better, just from a gameplay perspective even. And also a narrative. I don't know. I've got like lots of little nitpicky things. I still love the game, and so like I think there's some criticisms of this game that are fair. The fact that it has the aggregate score that it does is fucking ridiculous. Like people who are giving it a 4 and below, get the fuck out of here. Like there's no way, even objectively, you can say that this is like a 4 and below. Sure, say it's a 6. I believe your review much more if you're saying that. But yeah, the combat is weird for me, because I am playing it very differently than I played 1, which is almost the opposite of what I should be playing it as. Because Joel is a much more, when you're playing as Joel in the first one, it's a lot heavy hitting, more blunt force, whereas Ellie's a lot more nimble. I should be using stealth more, but I think this game does do a better job than the first one of the times when it forces you to use stealth are really fun to do stealth that way. And so the times when it doesn't force me to do it, I find, since it is like this like vengeance, hate-driven narrative, I find myself like just going guns blazing a lot more than I did in the first game. Like as a common thing they do in Naughty Dog games, particularly in the past 3 that they've done, is you sneak into an area and people will gather in a few characters will gather and start talking and be like, "Whoa, where did the people here? Oh my gosh, what should we do?" As like I don't even wait for them to finish. I just grab a Molotov and I just chuck it at them, and I'm just like, I don't wait for that shit. And then sometimes I regret that, but I don't know, man. This game is unlike anything else, and that's the first one was like that, and this one is where every fucking encounter feels so life or death. It feels so. I'm always like down to my last bullets after like a big fight.
Yeah,
and that feels so good. Like it's like my heart is pounding, and I feel badass in moments. And like, there's so much to talk about in this game.
Yeah,
like because there's negative reviews of like the Polygon Kotaku review that like I was kind of like, have you played video games? But I mean, I do get what they're talking about, and that is more apparent in certain moments in this game. But at the same time, I feel like Uncharted is more guilty of that. And like, I should specify, there's a critique of the amount of violence of, I guess, like the level you're taking violence to people who aren't like directly confronting you at that moment, I guess, and how many people she's actually killing that might not be fully directly involved in the reasons she's going on this mission. But I mean, if you played Uncharted 4, you're kicking the shit out of people like that all the time. And then it's worse because Nathan Drake's like winking at the camera the whole time. So it's like,
which is charming.
So
I find that I find that interesting because just based on where I am in the game, I feel like that in and of itself is going to play into the story a little bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's honestly kind of a critique I have of the game a little bit, is like I feel like some of my companions in the game, like the other characters, it's a little too on the nose preachy in a few moments. I'm like, I get it. You don't think this is okay. This is a vengeance story. Let me fucking kill him. Like, there was a moment where I was like kind of upset. I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a moment where you're going to get some like headway with this whole vengeance thing. And this character gets away. And I'm like, man, if you're going to give me this like vengeance blue balls, this has happened like 3 times in this game so far. And it finally came around. But man, was I upset on that. It happened a few times. I was like, fucking hey.
Yeah, I will say one other thing that I just want to mention real quick is I just finished playing the first one, and I mean, there's like letters, there's artifacts that you find everywhere, and I thought those were pretty well done in the first game. Man, the amount of time I'm taking to just explore every corner of this world, and like the stories that they're telling through the collectibles, like. There was one that you're kind of going through this suburban town and you're finding these letters that kind of all about this guy. I think you probably, it might be where you're coming up to, but anyways,
Okay.
just like the story of it's showing different sides of the whole, like directly after the outbreak story, and these really compelling stories that then kind of have these really subtle payoffs of like, oh, I just got this new item. And it's probably the thing that this guy was using, or you know what I mean? There's like little touches like that that are just amazing. And I will say, like, spending that much time exploring takes a big chunk of time.
Yeah.
The amount of incidental dialogue that occurs in that time where I'm like in a corner of a map and they're like, oh, remember when we did this thing? And like they just have this conversation is incredible. Like it's amazing how much faster it makes that time go by. And it makes me feel like I'm still accomplishing something, even though I'm doing the very video gamey thing of I'm going to fill out every corner of this map. I'm going to pick up every letter. And like all of that still feels good. Because they have written so much dialogue and have so many conversations that are just triggered by the environment, and it really is cool. Like it's one of those things where like even just as a technical piece, it's like, holy shit, they did this on a PS4, which is like on its way out the door.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. It's
That's
really cool.
that's how The Last of Us was. too.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
Last-
honestly, Naughty Dog is like so expert at that. Like
Mm-hmm.
they can like they know what to sacrifice to get like the things you're not going to notice really unless you're like purposely looking for them to make everything else look better. I don't know how they do it, but they do it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to finish it. I don't know. I have no idea how long it is. I've avoided everything for
Yeah.
this game. I haven't read any reviews. Yeah, so I don't. Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah,
Well, I won't tell you, but I've heard it's really fucking long.
that's what I've heard. Yeah.
So yeah, I have
I'm
no-
excited. I'm grateful for that.
I
actually.
did
I'm very
look
excited.
up kind of where I was, and like I'm not quite halfway yet. So it's like
Wow, really? Okay, fuck yeah, that's awesome. Okay, yeah, I know there's like
the nice thing is that the review I not the review, the walkthrough I said doesn't name the chapters after like chapter 5, so it's like to avoid spoilers.
Oh,
so it's
gotcha,
like,
yeah.
which was nice.
You don't
So-
like where you're going or like locations or anything like
Yeah.
that.
the chapter where you kill your best friend. Oh fuck. Yeah. Yeah. That is one of those things. It's like, what's the midpoint twist of this story? You know what I mean? It's really great. And the acting. Oh man, the performance capture stuff in this game is fucking phenomenal. And there's an awesome cover of an 80s song that I've listened to 17 times because it's like one of my favorite songs from the 80s. And it's just in this fucking game in a really cool
Oh,
spot.
and probably the most interesting use of the touchpad on PS4.
So I found
Do you
out.
feel like they designed that because Neil Druckmann was like at some point, no, we're working on something. We need a thing.
That was the
We'll do
delay.
this.
I was
Yeah.
going to mention because I found out that you can just like you can just like click the touchpad instead of actually strumming.
Individual strings.
Yeah, so you
really?
can just like click it and it works just fine. Because like fuck this, I
Oh,
want to strum
like
this string.
oh, different than
To
I was
strum all
thinking.
the way.
yeah, if you just
I see what
click the
you're saying.
touchpad, it will strum the
Oh,
guitar for
I
you,
didn't know
so you don't
that.
actually have to like swipe it with your with your
Gotcha.
thumb.
I found out last night that you can like touch certain parts of the touchpad lightly and do individual strings.
Oh, okay.
There's an awesome compilation on YouTube already of like a guy
Oh.
playing 15 songs, like Black Hole Sun, Californication. Like it's really good.
I was trying to like play some Neutral Milk Hotel songs because those are most of the songs I know on guitar, and then I was like, oh, I watched YouTube videos of a guy and learned the chords that way. I don't know the names of these chords, so I like it's very hard to figure out.
That's awesome. Anyways, this has been Last of Us Cast.
Which
Any
I
thoughts,
probably
Gwen?
still have more to talk about after this. Is
Yeah,
done
Gwen,
recording.
what's your experience with Last of Us 2 been so far?
I might play it someday.
Really? Did you play the first one? Oh, okay. You should play. It's good.
I know I should,
shit.
but I mean, when? When
Yeah,
am I
no,
gonna
I
play
get it. I get it. It is one of those things like thinking about playing I've been thinking about the first time I played The Last of Us a lot, and like finishing it at our apartment with Matt sitting on the couch.
I feel like Matt watched you play like 80% of that game.
He probably did, but like it's so funny just like thinking about that now, and like what a cool experience that was. And yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes. But anyways, awesome. Well, that's it for us this week. Uncut Gems next week or 2 weeks from now, whenever.
Yeah,
We're not beholden to your
Stuntman.
schedules. But yeah, we'll be that'll be our next project. So go watch that on Netflix. I don't know, you might regret it. I was gonna say you won't regret it. I don't know you. You got different shit going on. But you've been here with me, Tyler Harris, and
Gwen Hammer.
Tyler McKinley.
Justin Hammer.
see you bitches later. I don't know why I said that.
It's just, yeah.